Welcome to Finquesty. Today, we'll dive right into chapter 3 from Morgan Housel's absolutely brilliant book, The Psychology of Money. We're going to unpack a chapter simply called Never Enough. And honestly, I want to kick things off with a scenario I think we all can relate to. Have you ever noticed something kind of funny about how we actually view our income? Imagine someone making $30,000 a year. To them, hitting that 100,000 mark is dream, right? It feels like the ultimate, undeniable milestone of success. But let's look at the person who is actually earning that $100,000. Do they feel like they've finally crossed the finish line? Well, usually no. Almost immediately, that person starts dreaming about making half a million. The target just instinctively moves, and suddenly you have got that person making 500,000 who is wishing hard millions. Our expectations just rise every bit as fast as our paychecks. And that financial finish line, it literally vanishes into the thin air. What if the real problem here isn't how much we make, but what enough keeps moving? This question actually gets right to the core of why history is absolutely packed with people who had unimaginable wealth. We're talking more money than you or I could spend in 10 lifetimes, but who still lost absolutely everything trying to get just a little bit more. And that is exactly what Morgan Housel explores in chapter 3 of The Psychology of Money, a chapter called Never Enough. It is one of the most important lessons in the entire book because it explains why having more money does not always make people feel richer. In fact, it explains why some of the wealthiest people in history ended up making the most irrational financial decision imaginable. Now, I absolutely love this next story because it is so perfectly nailed the power of content. The famous author Joseph Heller was once at this incredibly lavish party thrown by a billionaire hedge fund manager. During the event, someone leans over and points out to Heller that their host had made more money in a single day than the Heller had earned from his massively successful novel Catch 22 over its entire history. Now, most of us would probably feel jealous hearing a crazy income disparity like that. But Heller's response is just unforgettable, and it really highlights a completely game changing concept in personal finance having a finish line. He just smiled and replied, "Yes, but I have something he will never have enough." Just that one word, enough. It is a profound, almost hidden superpower, which leads us right into the section 2. When more destroys everything, the winner who keeps playing. The absolutely crucial thing we need to understand here is what actually happened when two people who have clearly won the financial game just cannot stop playing. Because for many people, especially those chasing wealth, there is no finish line. No amount ever feels like, and that is where the danger begins. To explain this idea, Morgan Housel shared the real story of Rajat Gupta to illustrate this. Born in Kolkata, orphaned as a teenager, Gupta overcame incredibly hardship to eventually become the highly admired CEO of McKinsey, one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world. I mean, His life was quite literally a mobile script of success, prestige, and massive influence. By 2008, he had built up a personal fortune estimated at around $100 million. Just a pause and think about that number for a second. At that level of wealth, every reasonable human needs, that is security, freedom, status, opportunity, is entirely 100% covered for the rest of your life. Most people would consider the game over, but here is a catch. According to author, the problem is that wealth often changes the people we compare ourselves to. Gupta wasn't comparing himself to average folks anymore. He was hanging out with billionaires. And eventually, having a hundred of millions wasn't enough. He wanted to join the billionaires club. So, what did he do? That desire pushed him towards insider trading, a decision that ultimately destroyed the reputation which he had spent decades in building. And honestly, we see this exact same tragic pattern with Bernie Madoff. Most of us just know him as the guy behind the massive Ponzi scheme, but people completely forgot that he was already widely wealthy, deeply respected, and highly successful before any of this fraud happened. He ran a completely legitimate, incredibly successful market making business that was pulling in tens of millions of dollars a year. When you look at this stark contrast, you have really got to ask yourself a fascinating, almost baffling questions. Why would someone worth hundreds of millions of dollars ever gamble their personal freedom and their entire legacy just to get a little bit more money? Why on earth risk losing everything when you have already have everything? Well, the answer isn't just basic greed. It is an ingrained, deep-seated inability to recognize when you already have enough. It is a terrifying psychological trap. Your expectation just rise continuously. And that's where this chapter becomes relevant to all of us. Because most people watching this video will never be worth 100 millions. But many of us experience the same exact psychology. Maybe on a smaller scale. Maybe you are aiming for a higher salary, then you get it. For a few weeks, you are excited, then it becomes normal. Now, you are chasing the next rise, the next promotion, the next milestone, the goalpost moves. And suddenly, what once felt like success no longer feels special. According to Morgan Housel, one of the hardest financial skill in the world is getting the goalpost to stop moving. This means no matter how much you accumulate, it becomes literally impossible to ever feel wealthy. You don't actually feel richer. You are just running faster on a treadmill that never stops. This is where social comparison enters the picture. And according to the author, social comparison is often the real problem, the endless ladder. So, how does this actually shows up in our everyday lives? Even if we know or for a fact we're never going to have $100 million sitting in the bank. Well, social comparison creates this infinite ladder. Picture a rocky baseball player pulling in half a million dollars a year. Objectively, he's incredibly rich, but sitting right next to him in the same locker room is a superstar athlete making $40 million a year. Suddenly, that rookie feels kind of poor. And then that superstar looks over and compares himself to the billionaire investor who literally owns the team. Now, factor in social media today. It has taken this comparison trap from our local neighborhood and expanded it to the entire globe. You are no longer just looking over the physical fence. You are comparing yourself to celebrities widely successful entrepreneurs, and flashy influencers all over the world. It turns life into an exhausting game where the reality is simple, the ceiling is infinite. And you know what? The absolutely only way to win this game of comparison is just to refuse to play it. Because there will be always someone ahead of you, always someone with a bigger house, a better car, a large investment portfolio, a more glamorous lifestyle. And that sets us up for a successful redefining true wealth. Let's make this super practical and look at a common scenario that completely flips our basic assumption about what it actually means to be rich. Let's imagine two friends. One earns $6,000 versus the other $120,000. Society is always going to assume that $120,000 owner is automatically the wealthier one because, hey, look at that bigger apartment, the luxury car, the fancy vacations. But consider their stress level. It is incredibly high. On the flip side, the $60,000 owner who consistently saves about flashy deals and genuinely feels content that actually holds the true advantage here because they are living with very low financial stress. This brings us to a really beautiful core differentiations. True wealth is not about what you own, it is entirely about what you keep. It is about achieving ultimate financial freedom by actually needing the least, not by having the most. Absolute proof that money problems are psychological long before they ever becomes mathematical. And the greatest financial risks you ever face is never believing that you have enough. As Morgan Housel powerfully reminds us, there are something in this life that are just simply too valuable to risk for a little bit more money. Your reputation, your personal freedom, your relationship with people you love, your peace of mind, your happiness, and honestly, the single best way to protect these incredibly valuable parts of your life is just knowing when to stop chasing more. So, as we wrap up this video, I want to leave you with a deep, provocative thoughts to chew on. The ultimate goal of building wealth isn't to be the richest person in the world. Have you ever reached the point yet where money no longer controls your daily decisions? And more importantly, can you honestly look at your life right now, smile, and truly say three simple words: this is enough?